Am I worried about being on a GLP-1 medication long term? Where do I get my medication from? What is the safest way to get a hold of it? These are some of the things that you guys have been asking after my last video, where I talked about how I've lost over 40 pounds in 10 weeks with the help of Mounjaro. And in today's video, I want to answer some of these questions. So if we've not met before, hi, my name's Emma. I used to be an NHS and private GP before I quit medicine due to all the reasons I talk about in this video. But I am still very interested in health, obesity, exercise, and so now I'm working on improving my own health, and I want to talk a little bit more around GLP-1s because I think a lot of the social media coverage on this topic is extremely poor. It's misinformation and it's people misusing these drugs sometimes. So firstly, let's talk about, am I worried about being on a medication for life, and do I think I'm going to stay on it for life? Well, I'm already on thyroxine for life, so the idea of having to take something forever doesn't really scare me. That ship has sailed. But equally, I don't want to be on a medication that I don't need. And there's still a big part of me that feels that you should be able to do it without, even though all evidence of the last few decades is to the contrary for me. And over the last few weeks, this medication really has changed my life. But my aim is to get off it. And so I'm using the medication right now to try and facilitate a change in mindset, a change in how I'm eating and functioning day to day. And I feel like I'm a long way into that. But when it comes to, is it bad to stay on it for life? Well, obesity is a chronic condition, and in medicine, chronic means long term. I know it's often said in colloquial conversation that it's really bad. That's what people think chronic means, but it just means long term. And honestly, when I went onto this, did I think that I'd be on it forever? No, I didn't even think it would work. I didn't think that this would get me to the point that I'm at now, and it's been a surprise. So I was not prepared. And I guess my worry is that in the last video I did, I explained how even though the diet effects are great, it's how I feel day to day that is most incredible. And I do worry, can I maintain this without the medication? I'm hoping with drastic lifestyle change over the next few months, not that I'm doing it very drastically, but that over time it will build to something that is sustainable and makes me feel better, that I will feel better without the medication. So I am going to try and come off it, and I'll tell you more how I plan to do that in just a moment. But ultimately, the data about coming off Mounjaro right now is not great. So there was a study published at the end of last year where they took just short of 800 people across 4 countries, 70 different sites, all of whom were adults, all of whom had a BMI over 30 or 27 with some weight-related comorbidities. They were not allowed to be diabetic. And they put these people on 36 weeks of tirzepatide, which is Mounjaro, which I've been taking, and they tried to put up their dose every 4 weeks as tolerated. So the aim was to get them on the maximum possible tirzepatide doses, and everyone in that 36 weeks who was able to get their dose to 10 or 15 milligrams was then carried into the main part of the study. So going into the main part of the study, the average weight loss among the participants was 20.9%, which is pretty good. But at this point in the study, they then randomly allocated each participant remaining into either the tirzepatide arm, where they would continue to receive the same dose of tirzepatide that they just finished the 36 weeks on, and they would do that for the next year, or to a placebo arm, where they would be given a medication, which they don't know if it's tirzepatide or not, but it's not, and see what happens. So each participant didn't know which arm of the trial they were being put into, but then they continue with either the tirzepatide or the placebo for the next 12 months. And there were 2 things that they were looking at. They wanted to know amongst the participants, depending on which arm they're in, were they able to lose more weight or did they gain the weight back? So what was their change in body weight at the end of that year? The second thing that they wanted to look at was, were the participants able to maintain the weight loss that they'd achieved in that first 36 weeks? And the cutoff that they put was maintaining 80% of the weight loss that they'd achieved in the first part of the trial. So in the tirzepatide arm, in the people who had continued to take the medication, they found that over the subsequent year, that group lost an additional 5.5% of their body weight, which is amazing. And then more than that, over 89% maintained their weight loss, or maintained at least 80% of the weight loss they'd had in those first 36 weeks, which by any diet standard is pretty good. The second arm, however, the people who'd come off the tirzepatide, they actually regained 14% of their body weight in that subsequent year. And worse than that, only 16% were able to maintain the weight loss that they'd achieved in those first few weeks. So that strongly indicates that people need to stay on the medication to maintain their weight loss, though it also shows it isn't impossible to do. Now, I have mixed feelings about this study. One of the big points for me is that they only took people who were doing max doses, whereas I am on a low dose, and there's a lot of us who are on 2.5 milligrams and 5 milligrams who are achieving the results that they need. And I wonder if that means that we're different in one way or another. Maybe it means the reason that we're overweight is different, and maybe that would give us very different results doing a trial like this. I wonder if they'll be worse though. I don't think this is a positive. I wonder if people on lower doses might have a deficiency, and so if you take those people off the medication, maybe they will rebound quicker. Who knows? Personally, I'm neither reassured nor does this make me feel worse. I don't really know what the outcome would be for myself, but it is a good indication that people will need this medication long term. The second thing to consider is that it's not impossible to keep the weight off. There were 16% in that second group who did manage to keep the weight off. And when we think about how difficult it is to really change our mindsets and change our lifestyles, maybe if you can really do that on a deep level, maybe you can maintain the weight loss. That's the other hope that I've got against all odds. So that is what I am working on. I'm working to really use this Mounjaro and how it makes me feel good to enable me to make good habits and then really drill them in. So over the last few years, I've been very interested in habits. I've read some great books like Atomic Habits, which I hugely recommend, and Charles Duhigg's The Power of Habit is probably one of my favorite books. And in that, it talks about how you can never really get rid of a habit, but you can build a stronger habit over the top of it. And so what I want to do over the next few months is really build strong, good eating habits that are easy for me to follow and that I default to rather than going back to what I used to do. Another thing to consider is that if you're here in the UK right now and you want to try a GLP-1, you typically pay for a month's worth of a GLP-1 somewhere between £125 and £225. It's variable, and if you're starting with a new pharmacy or new provider, you might find you can get the cheaper end for that first dose and then it goes a lot higher. But some people will say this is very expensive, and it's not cheap, but compared to other countries, it's very cheap. When you look at prices in the US, we are very lucky in the UK to have such low prices on this right now. But when you think about the NHS and how the NHS isn't working too well, and we're increasingly seeing people come over from US healthcare companies now to the UK, it's not inconceivable that in the future we will end up paying the same prices as the US. And so I would very much like to get off this medication because I could not afford US prices, and I don't want to be at the mercy of an insurance company and whether or not they will allow me to have that. So it is a consideration to get off it, but we will see what happens. But just tied into this really is, what is my goal on Mounjaro and how do I measure success on it? That's something a lot of you have been asking me, and it ties in with this quite well. I am a big believer, again, from all this reading around habits, that I set goals now around things that I directly control. So my weight on the scale every day, I can influence, but I can't directly control it because there's so many other factors. And so what I do instead now is directly focus on the things I can control every day. I focus on what I'm eating. I focus on my mindset. I focus on finding joy in what I'm doing and really encourage myself to keep going. And so every single day I'm enjoying where I'm at and I'm building those new habits and I'm hitting my goal every single day. I'm not waiting for a goal that's 20 years down the line or 20 pounds off. I'm just hitting my goal by directly achieving what I set out to do. And when you focus on the present and what you can do right now rather than what you hope will happen in the future, that is quite transformative for your mindset and really getting into it. And I found this a bit of a joy. So I love eating healthier food now. I've always bought the whole foods in. I've always bought the good foods in, and I've eaten them, still felt awful, and then had to go out and eat the rubbish. So when I talked before about the price of Mounjaro, for me, it's a bit embarrassing to say, but it's probably cheaper to pay for Mounjaro than all the excess food I used to buy. Whereas now we do a weekly shop and I eat that. And increasingly when we do a weekly shop, I just like going to the fruit and veg bit and going through it. And I feel such pride really that I'm enjoying the foods now in that section. I'm getting really into it. I'm learning how to cook them better. And our son is really participating in this, and my husband's participating. We're all changing our habits together as a family. And for my little boy, he likes to know, how healthy is this? Is this the right thing to be eating? So my husband got him a little healthy magnetic chart that's stuck on our fridge, and there's all the different vegetables and fruits, and he gets to put them on his plate every day. And it just builds healthy habits and it encourages you to enjoy the right foods. So I'm really working on the food every day rather than focusing on the weight on the scale. So my goal is to continue doing this. And right now, the way I'm living, this is how I want to live. My weight can do what it likes. I've actually got to the point with my weight, if I'm totally honest, I know I'm still curvy, but I'm not trying to be super thin. I just want to be healthy. And so I'm not really focused or that bothered about my weight now. I'm bothered about maintaining and keeping this going. So what I'm eating is still resulting in, I wouldn't say a fast weight loss anymore, but it's still coming off quite regularly. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm not increasing my GLP-1 dose. I'm on 2.5 milligrams. I know that's the starter dose. It's working fine. I could push it up to 5 milligrams and try and get rid of all of my hunger, but I don't see the point in that. Whilst, yes, I'm sure that will result in weight loss because I won't be hungry, I won't be eating, it won't be resulting in any lifestyle change. And so as much as a lot of social media people talk about, yeah, push it up, go as high as you can go, get rid of everything, and you'll feel great and you'll lose loads, that's not the point. That's the quick win mentality that people are quite negative around when it comes to GLP-1s, which I completely understand, but a lot of people are not using it that way. Don't feel you have to push it up. So where I'm at now, I'm going to wait and see what happens with my weight. At some point, the way I'm eating, the way I'm living, my weight will stabilize. And wherever it stabilizes, that's where it's going to be. So as I said before, my BMI is just under 27 now, and I don't care if it doesn't even hit 25. The way I'm eating now is sustainable. It's how I like to live. The exercise I'm doing is sustainable, and I will see where my weight lands. Once I've got there, I'm going to leave it for a few months. I'm going to keep drilling in those habits, eating the right foods, getting used to living this way. And also, as I mentioned in my previous video, I'm really into fasting. So I want to bring in some form of fasting every month, not from a weight loss point of view, which is so nice to say. I'm literally just doing it for the fact that I think fasting is really good for your body. And I want to completely have my lifestyle down. I want it to be easy to follow and ready to then try and come off the medication. But there is a theory of weight having a set point. So this is the theory that all of us have an innate hardwired weight that our body wants to be, and it's different for everyone. It's not a dead set weight, it's a range that you should hover within. As I say, it's a theory, it's not proven. And some people say that one of the reasons you struggle to change weight is because your body grabs onto this weight and tries to maintain it. And so the theory goes that if you're going to change your weight, you need to really allow your body to adjust to that new weight and reset your set point. And this is one of the things that people talk about with fasting and how fasting can help to reset your set point. Well, I'm going to do this over the next few months. Allow my body to adjust to whatever weight it chooses to land at. I'm really not that stressed about it. And then at that point, once I'm settled, then I'll start to come off the medication. And because I'm already on the lowest dose, I'll likely either space it out more. I've heard good and bad for doing that. I'll see what the evidence is at the time, or I'll just stop it and we'll see how I go. But if it gets too bad, I can always just go back on the medication.